Marine vet Rory sits dead center in a psyche eval, and Dr. Rivera asks if he's looking to patch things up with his ex. He says there's no point as she's not coming back. Then she shifts to his kid, asks if he'd even think about reconnecting. He just stares, figuring nothing good comes from answering. Before walking out, he drops a quiet line that makes it clear he's got something dangerous in mind.
I figured out a while back, so I told myself that.
Then bails like a guy who's already locked on target. Across town at Bova's bakery, Muscle Besigai and his sidekick DeChico are working over their boy Scalvo. The thick-set boss rips into him for running his mouth about a job set for election night. Now the heat's on and the crew's scattered. Scalvo scrambles to save his hide, swearing he'll scare up some bodies willing to take the score. Besigai isn't buying it after the mess Scalvo made. Nobody's gonna touch it. Down the block, ex-con Cobby's got his breathalyzer shoved at the neighbor's kid, telling him to blow hard like it's some dumb game. Looks like he's trying to get the kid to take the test for him in order to get his motorbike started. The boy plays along until his neighbor spots it, calls him out, and demands the kid back. As Cobby drives off, she yells that next time she'll have the cops waiting. He drifts into a dive that reeks of beer and bleach, drops onto a stool, and starts winding up an old-timer about whether he wants to hear a joke. The phone rings behind the bar, and Mr. Kelly, the barkeep, grabs it. Scalvo's on the other end, telling him to put Cobby on. Kelly, already smelling trouble, warns Cobby he's one bad move from a ticket back to Walpole. Cobby smirks, takes the receiver, listens as Scalvo pitches the job and tells him to meet in an hour if he's in. Soon as the line goes dead, Kelly says if it's the score he thinks it is, he'd better walk right out the door. Cobby just laughs it off and heads out. When he rolls up to Donald McGilvery Hall, the first face he sees is Rory, who doesn't even give him the time of day before dragging out a chair for himself. A minute later, Scalvo shows up with Besigai in tow. Besigai fixes Rory with a look and asks what he's been up to since the core. Rory just shrugs, says he sands floors. That's all. The old man's face turns sour like he'd been expecting some war hero resume. Then his eyes cut over to Cobby, asking if he's the ex-con. Cobby bristles, and for a second it feels like the room might crack, until DeChico strolls in with donuts and kills the heat. Besigai finally lays it out. Boston's got a mayoral race, and Michelli's already measuring the drapes. Election night, he's throwing a shindig down at the wharf. Big names, big wallets, the kind of crowd where 500 just gets you through the door. Michelli's old school, so it's all greenbacks, 100 a pour, and every player looking for a city contract walks in with envelopes and gym bags stuffed with payoff cash. There will be no paper trail and no questions. The job's simple. Get in, scoop the dough, get out. Besigai figures 300 grand easy, and he's cutting 10% each. But Rory says he wants exactly $32,480, not a penny less.
How much you need?
$32,480, exactly.
Besigai nods, says, fine. He'll lock that number in for low haul. Rory still gets his cut. High haul, but he's capped there. The play's clean. Come in by boat, sneak up the back stairs, slide past the kitchen where only a couple of dish jockeys are working, tie them up, grab the wharf manager, and go straight for the stash. Then Rory tosses a curve nobody saw coming by, asking what happens if McKelly tanks and Choi pulls it off instead, cause maybe, just maybe, the guy's campaign actually got legs. Cobby's all in, but Besigai's face sours, because in his mind, McKelly's winning is a given. Yet, Rory's what if sticks enough that he waves the two outside to jaw with Scalvo and DeChico in private. Out on the sidewalk, Rory tells Cobby this is his first time on a job like this, and Cobby just smirks, saying it's too late to start thinking about life choices, while Rory insists he's not switching careers, he's just checking something off the list. Back inside, Besigai leans into Scalvo, telling him to make sure everything runs smooth and to keep the rookies away from the cash until it's bagged. Once Scalvo leaves, Besigai quietly tells DeChico Scalvo won't be needed after this, and there's no cake or fanfare coming for him. Scalvo goes over the building schematics with Rory and Cobby, rolling them out like they're gospel. And Cobby squints and asks if he grabbed the schematics off Zillow, which earns him a sharp shut up and listen. Rory scribbles in a notepad, and when Scalvo asks what he's doing, Rory says he's taking notes because there's too much to keep in his head, which gets a long, annoyed sigh and a look that says he's already over it. Over the next couple days, the three of them check out the place and watch the people they'll have to deal with Cobby firing off nonstop questions while Rory fills page after page in his notebook, and Scalvo's irritation grows by the hour, convinced neither of them is taking this seriously. When he finishes going over everything, Rory hits him with one last question. If the hostages don't listen, what's the move? Scalvo tells him to mention he has a gun.
I have a gun.
And Rory nods, writes it down like it's genius, while Scalvo stares at him like he's lost his mind. When early the next morning, while it's still dark, they cram into the small boat headed for the wharf, and the ride is rough from the start, with Cobby poking at Scalvo until the guy's ready to snap, while Rory keeps his head down, memorizing every note he's written. Halfway there, they flip something in the water. The boat starts taking on water fast, but somehow they make it to shore. Soaked and annoyed, they slip into the building's back stairwell like clockwork, and they're just steps from the kitchen when Rory pipes up with one last question. Scalvo cuts him off sharp, telling him he's had it with the endless questions and to shut it. They push forward, firearms ready, only to walk into more workers than they planned for. Scalvo orders Cobby to tie them up.
Tie him up!
Got like 6 zip ties, genius.
And Cobby admits he only brought 6 zip ties, more or less. Scalvo orders him to improve. When a worker's phone starts ringing, Scalvo instructs Rory and Cobby to grab all their phones. Rory steps in, barking at everyone to get on the floor and dump their phones in the sink. Cobby points out that Rory will escort them into the walk-in freezer and nudges him, asking if he hurts people to make him sound dangerous. Rory hesitates, then blurts the first thing that comes to mind. He's got a gun.
I have a gun!
The workers scream, genuinely terrified. Cobby leans in, adding that Rory doesn't mind using it if he has to. Rory, still half in his own head, mutters he doesn't want to fire at all, earning a look of pure disappointment from Cobby. As they herd the workers into the freezer, Cobby asks why there are so many of them. One worker shrugs, saying the event from last night never ended because everyone's still riled about Chau winning the elections. Scalvo and Cobby both freeze, the news hitting like a sucker punch, while Rory smirks quietly, having warned them Chau was a real threat. Things go from bad to worse when they reach the office safe, only to find it practically empty with just a handful of cash. Dave Wedge, the wharf manager, explains the haul was so big they had to truck it out the night before. The robbers' shock and bickering give Dave a chance to pull his gun, but Cobby's fast, stopping him before anything happens, though the scuffle rips off Scalvo's mask, leaving his face exposed. Elsewhere, Michelli is losing it on his campaign manager, beating him up for ever claiming the election was in the bag. Alan, his legal counsel, tells him to concede, but McKelly snaps back that if Chau gets in and starts poking through the office books, all of them are going to jail. Things spiral fast for Scalvo, Cobby, and Rory as they try to make their exit, only to realize the schematics they studied don't line up with the real building. They stumble straight into the room where Michelli and his crew are hanging. Cobby, still unmasked, lifts his gun and orders everyone to empty their pockets. The partygoers comply, even the mayor, reluctantly handing over his grandfather's bracelet. It seems smooth until the chief of police steps in, gun in hand, telling Cobby to drop his piece. The two argue, both refusing to back down, until some poor worker barges in to tell Michelli that the place is being robbed. The distraction is all Scalvo and the chief need, and they fire at each other, both dropping instantly. Cobby takes a grazing shot to the shoulder, and he and Rory bolt. Another wrong turn lands them in the main event hall, and chaos erupts. They push into the kitchen, snag a truck key from one of Michelli's drivers, and jump behind the wheel, gunning it out of there. While driving, Cobby hears a phone ringing in the truck. He whispers at Rory to buckle up, and after some back and forth, Rory finally clicks on it. Without warning, Cobby speeds into an abandoned lot and slams the brakes to a stop. A thump echoes from the back of the truck. Cobby hops down dashes to the back of the truck and immediately leans against it. Rory wonders what's going on, and Cobby reminds him there are supposed to be 2 truck drivers, but they only saw one, the one they stole the key from, which means the second driver must be inside the truck. Rory doesn't buy it. Cobby warns. The noise was the second driver, stationed in the back to take out anyone trying to jack the cash. They check it, and a gun goes off from inside, buzzing past Rory. They bail on the truck, sprinting to a nearby car, hotwire it, and tear out of there. Bessigay, hearing the mayor's heist is blown, vanishes into the shadows, telling DeChico to hire one of Scalvo's guys, Booch, to track down Rory and Cobby and tie up loose ends. Meanwhile, Michelli orders Frank Toomey from Special Operations to recover the bracelet at any cost. Booch and his partner Kalani hit Bova's bakery, hesitant because Rory and Cobby's location is unknown. Meanwhile, Cobby drags Rory to Mr. Kelly's place, where Rory calls DeChico to explain what's gone down and demand his cut. DeChico promises a doctor, but really sends Booch and Kalani to finish the job. Frank storms into Bova's, confronting DeChico over the robbery, knowing Scalvo's tied in. DeChico denies everything, but Frank doesn't buy it and starts trashing the joint. Back at Kelly's, Rory digs into the bag, expecting cash, but finds only a few bills and trinkets. Cobby snatches the mayor's chain and notices an inscription on the back. Back at the bakery, DeChico's on the phone, barking at Booch about the bracelet and warning that Frank's sniffing around. He orders Booch to grab it from Rory and Cobby, no excuses. Later, Booch and Kalani roll up at Kelly's spot, demanding to see the haul, but frown when it's just a few trinkets and a stack of ones. Their mood flips when the bracelet comes into view, and Booch tells Kalani to hang back while he handles business. Booch levels his gun, but Cobby's ready. He's cut the gas line and the place is crawling with fumes. One spark, and they all go up. Cobby lifts his piece, bleeding but unafraid. Booch calls his bluff, but Cobby leans into it, letting him know there's nothing left to lose. Booch hesitates and backs down. Cobby orders Rory to disarm him, grab the truck keys, and snatch the necklace. They make a run for it, and Booch, fuming, steps outside, yelling about how far they'll get with a wounded Cobby and cops closing in. The gas catches mid-rant, and the blast throws him off his feet, charred but alive.
No, I'm not okay.
DeChico calls Bessigay later, grumbling that Frank's visit turned the robbery into nothing. Rory drives straight to Dr. Rivera's office and barges in while she's mid-session, making her tell him to wait.
You have an MD, right? We're good.
Rory, wait outside.
When she's done, Rory hustles her to the truck, and her eyes go wide as she sees Cobby and realizes these are the robbers tearing up the news. Rory begs her to patch Cobby up, but she balks, saying it'd be illegal. So Rory spins it that if the story's that he took her hostage, no law's broken. She agrees, but only if he turns himself in later. She then takes them to her place and pulls the bullet from Cobby. Outside City Hall, protesters swarm for Michelli's immediate ouster. Inside, Michelli's going nuts. He's called a whole lot of safecrackers in a desperate attempt to crack open the safe in case he doesn't get the bracelet in time. The safe refuses to budge. Cobby wakes, groaning, and asks if Rory grabbed Rivera's phone. Rory says no, and he trusts her. But she's on the line with the cops, explaining she's made a leniency deal. Rory doesn't buy it because the badge is on them as cop killers. Units start flooding the streets. Rory and Cobby slip out the back, Rivera chasing, pleading for him to turn himself in. He ignores her, and she decides to follow them instead. Suddenly, a cop car rams Rory's truck, shoving them out of an alley. The move backfires when another cruiser misses them and smashes into the first. Rory, Cobby, and Rivera start shouting over each other, Rory swerving to avoid being boxed in, cops and a chopper hot on their tail. Rivera plays the conscience, telling him to stop, while Cobby leans the other way, pushing him to keep going. Rory listens to Cobby, diving into the underpass toward Quincy Logan Airport. The chopper loses them there, but patrol cars stay relentless. Rory's wheelwork is tense, navigating debris and traffic. Cobby leans over, asking Rivera for coffee if they make it, but she shuts him down cold. They finally shake the tail when a pickup hauling cars tips over, creating a wall. Cruisers slam into each other in the pileup, sirens screaming. Cobby suggests they should hit Kelly's bar next, steering Rory toward their next hideout. Meanwhile, DeChico shows up at Bessigai's cabin, and they start hashing out plans to make a run for Canada on foot, which sends Bessigai into a fit of rage because he wouldn't be running if those three hadn't screwed up. Rory, Cobby, and Rivera roll up at the bar, and Rory slips in the back to unlock the door. They barely catch their breath before Frank shows, so Cobby kills the lights and herds everyone down to the cellar. Sometime later, footsteps echo above, and Cobby figures it's cops pacing the floor until the cellar door creaks open and Mr. Kelly tells them to come up. When they step up, Frank's waiting. Mr. Kelly just shakes his head, saying whatever mess they're in, Cobby brought it on himself, then walks off. Frank wastes no time, demanding the bracelets, and Cobby hands them over. He tells them to put their hands on the table and wait for the cops while he leaves with Rivera and the bracelet. Outside, the streets are crawling with police. Rory thinks about following instructions, but Cobby points out he's cut a gas line again, and the bar erupts the second the cops try to enter. In the chaos, Rory and Cobby slip out and melt into a packed commercial bus. On the bus, Cobby throws out the idea of running to Montreal. Rory mocks him for even thinking it through. They know nobody, they have zero transport, and they'd freeze walking across the border in -50 weather. He tells Cobby they'd need a dog sled and a pack of huskies just to survive the trip, which clearly hasn't occurred to Cobby. Rory's suggestion is even worse, robbing a bank. Cobby tears apart the plan, noting that Rory is already a terrible stick-up man. And with both clearly wanting different things, they call it and plan to split. Then Cobby spots a protest placard on the bus, a caricature of McKelly clutching a sack of cash, and it clicks. He remembers the bracelet numbers, which could be the safe code. He nudges Rory, and they decide to hit the mayor again. They head over to City Hall, still swarmed with protesters yelling for McKelly's head, then duck into a fire truck, stealing uniforms and gas cans while nobody's paying attention. Meanwhile, Frank passes the bracelet up the chain to Alan, who delivers it to McKelly. In disguise, Rory and Cobby roll towards City Hall and pour gasoline through a pipeline before lighting it, sending alarms screaming. The mayor's in the middle of shoving cash into a bag when the lights cut, and a PA system orders everyone out. Security heads to escort him, but he demands a minute, insisting he's not done with the safe. Sprinklers kick on, and they finally yank him out. Alan tries to leave for his safety, but stays on orders from McKelly to see the money out. Rory and Cobby try to reach the office by elevator, but remember firefighters don't use them, so they take the stairs. A firefighter spots them lingering and demands to know what they're doing. They keep moving, pretending nothing's up, but he starts chasing them, which only speeds them toward the office. They get inside, but the firefighter's right on their heels, swinging an axe at the door. Cobby mutters that everyone in town suddenly wants to be a hero, and then spots Alan still in the office. Alan protests he's no hero. The firefighter continues hacking away, but Rory shouts that they've got a hostage and will throw him out if the firefighter doesn't stop. The guy freezes, but Cobby groans that what could have been a simple 4 to 7 year stick-up just morphed into a 20-year kidnapping case, and Alan jumps in to explain it's worse. They're in a federal building. The Homeland Security Act just kicked in, and with a government employee as the hostage, the response is going to be shoot to kill with a full suite of protocols waiting to trigger. Frank is nursing a drink at a bar near City Hall when word of the fire ripples through the place, and he doesn't even need to think twice, knowing this has Rory and Cobby written all over it. Upstairs, Cobby pops the safe, and stacks of cash spill out thick enough to make Rory's mind drift. $32,480 was the deal, but he's already thinking about taking a bigger slice. Rivera walks into City Hall and heads straight for the front desk, asking to speak to a cop. Back at the safe, Rory and Cobby are still glued to the sight of all that cash when Alan steps in, saying he's got a deal to offer. They wave him off, telling him they're busy, but he shoves his way forward. He says he wants immunity from prosecution in exchange for full cooperation. then reaches into the safe and pulls out a flash drive. What's on it, he explains, is 20 years worth of proof of McKelly's kickbacks, dirty deals, and offshore accounts that can't be traced. Rory and Cobby just stare at him, not sure why he's showing them this, and remind him they're neither cops nor firemen. Alan says he needs them as witnesses to prove he played ball, and he slips the drive into Cobby's hand. Across the street, a squad of snipers moves onto the opposite roof, rifles up and ready. One of them spots Rory through the window and calls out that he's got a clean shot. Cobby catches the red dot dancing on Rory's chest and dives, shoving him aside just as the sniper squeezes the trigger. The shot whistles past Rory, and then all hell breaks loose. Gunfire rips through the place, glass shattering and walls splintering as everyone ducks for cover. The defense team leader clocks that there's a hostage inside and yells for them to hold fire. When the shooting stops, Cobby notices his shirt's wet. He's been clipped in the shoulder again, same damn spot as last time. While Rory and Cobby bicker over whether Cobby actually caught a bullet or just banged himself up in the fall, SWAT tags Rivera as their negotiator, straps a vest on her, and sends her in. She walks straight to the mayor's office, knocks, and calls out that she's alone. Rory cracks the door and she asks how they're holding up. Cobby swears he's been shot again, but Rory waves it off. Alan pipes up with an introduction, claiming he's playing nice, though Rivera's eyes go straight to the stack in the safe. She asks Rory what exactly he thinks he's doing, and he just gives a smug little shrug, saying he's collecting his $32,480. Rivera pulls up asking what his next move is now that he's got the cash, even offering to stash it in her vest and pass it to his kid since that's who he claims it's for. She asks how he's feeling again, and he says plain and simple, he doesn't want to die. Cobby's quick to add he's in the same boat, and when Alan tries to join in, Cobby shoots him a look and reminds him he's not part of their crew. Rory finally decides he's going to turn himself in, but Rivera warns him the second he does, they'll drop him. She tells him the only shot they've got is to run together. They want to know what the point of her whole pitch was then, and she admits she was wrong. That's when Rory settles on the Montreal plan. Rivera walks out of City Hall with Alan, and when the cops ask where Rory and Cobby are, she just smirks and says they'll be out soon. Sure enough, the pair hurl McKelly's safe out the window, and the crowd outside dives for the flying bills. In the mess, they slip into a fire truck and roll out, only to have Toomey bear down on them in his armored ride. He runs them down, and when he pulls alongside, they try trading the drives for their freedom. He still cuffs them. Over at the airport, Michelli gets grabbed while trying to skip to Montreal. Back at City Hall, his framed photo comes off the mayor's wall, and Choi steps in for his own portrait. His advisor leans in, pointing out that if they take Rory and Cobby to trial, they'll have to put the drive with $100 million in offshore accounts on record, which would dump the cash straight into the state's hands. If they let them walk, there's no evidence, and the money stays with them. Choi gets the hint and smiles. Not long after, Rory and Cobby are quietly cut loose and dropped near their rides. Rory asks for their fire boots, and the cop says they've been sent back to the station. When he mentions leaving something inside, the officer tells him if he means the cash, that's gone too. All they've got now is their freedom. Rory heads off to watch his kids' hockey game, and Cobby drifts toward Rivera's place. A few days later, Besigai and DeChico turn up on the wrong side of the border patrol, half buried in snow, frozen solid after trying to sneak into Canada.